dance outfits, you definitely have stretch scraps. I used to throw mine away until I realized they could actually upgrade my dance wardrobe. Hi everyone, it's Mel from Sparkly Belly. Today I'll share with you 10 beginner-friendly projects that you can make with less than 1 meter or 1 yard of stretch fabric. Let's get started. To make fabric fringe, you need these materials. You can find the list in the description, but be sure to use stretch fabric, not woven fabric. First, cut your fabric into a rectangle panel like this. The width is your desired fringe length plus 1 centimeter. The length is how long you want the fringe to be. Using a marker with a disappearing ink or something that's easy to erase, draw a horizontal line at 1 centimeter from the top edge. Then draw vertical lines. I'm using SS20 rhinestones here, which are about 5 millimeters wide, so I'm making this fringe 8 millimeters wide. It's really up to your preference, but I like each strand to be just a little wider than the rhinestones. Also, thinner strands make more delicate fringe. Then glue on rhinestones on each strand. I placed my rhinestones about a few millimeters apart from each other. It looks nice when the stones are placed the same distance apart from each other. Once the glue dries, take a pair of sharp scissors or rotary blade and cut according to the vertical lines. If you have, I recommend using a rotary blade for a clean finish. Take your time and cut these lines as neatly as possible. And do not cut through the top. Stop at the horizontal line so the top of the strands are all connected. Now I've seen people pull these strands at this point, which curls up the edges, but I like these flat strands better, so I'll leave the edges as they are. And your fabric fringe with rhinestones is complete! You can simply sew and apply the fringe tape on the bra top, belt, or skirt. It's made of stretchy fabric, so you can attach it on the stretchy material and you won't have any problems. You can hide the tape with appliques or more fringe or other embellishments. It's cool to layer some beaded fringe too. Also, you can cut each strand apart and attach it individually as well. It's a very cool look. Here I made the fringe out of stretch mesh. It's kind of translucent and it's a fun look too. This fabric fringe is super easy to make and beginner friendly, and it's so pretty. So it's a great option for decorating troop costumes as well. These are the materials I used, and you'll find the list in the description below. Also, you can download the free pattern of these appliques from the link in the description. So first, I made a pattern for my appliques. I roughly traced the shape of the area that I wanted to cover with appliques on a piece of paper. And also, I roughly planned out the size and the feel of the design. I took a stone that I wanted to work off of to find the right location for it and traced the stone on the paper as well. Then at the desk, I just drew the design I liked. It helps to have some of the larger stones and rhinestone chain you want to incorporate in your motifs when you draw your design. I just outlined the general shapes in this pattern and left the details to be figured out on the fabric. I made one large motif for the neckline and another one for the side cutouts. For the side cutout, I wanted this one perfectly symmetrical, so I designed half of it, cut that side out, and folded it at the center. Then I traced it to make the other side. If you would like to use this pattern, you can download it from my blog for free. Find the link in the description. When your design is ready, cut out each motif. And simply place each motif on your fabric and trace it. I'm going to have this motif on either side of the neckline, so I flipped the pattern and traced it again. Now have fun and apply rhinestones using rhinestone glue according to your design. I like to start with large pieces because I usually want larger pieces in specific areas. Then I move on to follow the outline of the motif with rhinestone chain. Creating a neat outline is very important to creating a beautiful applique, so I recommend you take your time here. And the neat outline gives you the boundaries and guidelines that you can work around. As you can see here, I like to work on symmetrical pieces at the same time. It helps me make sure that the rhinestones are placed in the same manner. Then fill the rest with whatever pieces you like. For small rhinestones, I just use the gem tag glue out of the original bottle, but if it's hard to squeeze out a little bit of glue at a time, you can use glue syringes. Once you're done, let the glue dry for 24 hours. When the glue is dry, take a threaded needle and stitch the areas you feel you could use extra hold, like the rhinestone chain and the large sew-on rhinestones. My applique is going on a belly dance dress, so I like to make sure all the stones and chains are secured well. Then take your scissors and cut around the motif. You can cut it very close to the stones, but be careful around the areas where you stitched and don't snip the threads by accident. It might be easier to use small scissors for tight areas. Take your time and clean up the cutout area as well. And your rhinestone appliques are complete. Let's apply them to the dress. You'll notice that after the glue is dry, the whole thing becomes stiffer, but you can gently mold it with your hands. Place an applique on the dress and hold it with pins. Once you decide on a good placement, stitch around the applique by hand. There's not much fabric at the very edges, so just go in between the stones. As long as the applique is secured well, that's okay. The great thing about using appliques is that you can remove them in the future. So if you want to change the embellishment of the dress, or if you want to use the appliques elsewhere in the future, you can easily snip the stitches and save the whole appliques. I wanted a little movement piece, so I added little rhinestone fringes. I pre-cut strands of rhinestone chain and sewed each one directly onto the dress. They're about 5 to 10 centimeters long or 2 to 4 inches long. You can go under the first stone a few times to secure it. I placed the strands side by side. And that's basically it. I did the same process for all of my appliques and glued on some more rhinestones around the appliques and the mesh cutouts of the dress too. Thanks to the appliques, the neckline design is beautifully symmetrical, and the motifs of the appliques appear more raised than the rest of the stones, which creates more depth to your rhinestone design and makes it look more sophisticated.
By the way, if you want to make this dress, make sure to check out Sparkly Belly's All Access membership. With All Access membership, you get instant access to all my courses, 19 and counting, with over 32 designs, including many dress designs. Customize each piece to your unique measurements and budget, and create the perfect professional outfits for your style. Curious? Check out the link in the description.
These are the materials I used, and you'll find the material list in the description. First, I wrapped the elastic around my waist to find the most comfortable length. It's best to stand with your back straight in a dance posture to get the right length. I added 1 centimeter to the length and cut the elastic. Then I cut stretch fabric that's 3.5 centimeters wide and 2 centimeters longer than the elastic. Make sure the direction of stretch is parallel to your elastic. Fold it right sides together lengthwise and do a zigzag stitch with a 5mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance and turn it inside out. I'm using a safety pin here to do that, and insert elastic through it, and again I'm using a safety pin to do this. Straighten out everything and fold in the ends and sew them shut. Now at the ends, I sewed on my snap button. Place the socket side on the right side and the stud side on the wrong side. And then I just had fun gluing rhinestones to the belt. For this one, I used the nude color base and clear rhinestones, so I can pair the belt with a lot of different dresses, but it would also be really cool to match the color with your costume, or even use a contrasting color, or multiple colors of rhinestones. Be creative. And my rhinestone belt is complete. It is really easy to make and it's super comfy because it's elastic and made exactly to my size. And this belt instantly glams up the whole outfit. I love how it goes over the cutouts of my dress. First, put on your t-shirt and mark about 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch below the underbust line. Also mark or measure where you want the top of the halter top to be. I chose around my collarbone, which is about 4 centimeters above the deepest point of my neckline. And measure the width of your neck. Take your fabric and check the direction of stretch. Even if it's 4-way stretch, there's usually a stretchier direction. Make a note of that. Then fold the fabric right sides together so the stretchier direction is perpendicular to the fold. Fold your t-shirt like this so you can see the front side. Align the fold of the t-shirt and the fold of the fabric. Measure and mark the top of the halter top from the front neckline on the fold of the fabric. Then mark the bottom point of the armhole and trace the side seam down to the underbust level, which we marked with a safety pin. Fold up the t-shirt at the underbust line and trace the fold. Remove the t-shirt and draw a horizontal line that's half of your neck width from the mark on the fold. And connect the end of the line with the top of the side seam line. Add a slight curve so it'll sit on your body flat. From the horizontal line, measure 5 centimeters or 2 inches up and draw a rectangle like this. And from the bottom line, measure 5 centimeters or 2 inches down and draw a rectangle. And along the curved line and side seam, add a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Cut along the lines and you have the front panel ready. Fold the fabric right sides together again and place your folded t-shirt on top, aligning the folds. This time just trace from the end of the armhole along the side seam to the underbust level. Fold up t-shirt at the underbust line and trace along the fold. Remove the t-shirt and draw a horizontal line from the top of the side seam line to the fold of the fabric. From the bottom line, measure 5 centimeters or 2 inches down and draw a rectangle. And for the rest of the edges, add a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Cut along the lines and you have the back panel ready. Next, take your lace fabric and again check the direction of stretch. Place your front and back panels on the lace fabric and the stretchier direction is parallel to the width of the panels. And cut the lace fabric according to the panels. Also cut a long strip that's 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches wide and about 1 meter or 39 inches long. That's it for cutting. Let's start assembling. First, place the front and back panels right sides together and match up the side seams. Do a zigzag stitch with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Repeat for the lace panels. Next, place the lace panels over the solid panels so the wrong side of the solid fabric is facing the right side of the lace and match up all the edges. Do a zigzag stitch along the top edges, both front and back, with the 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Trim corners of the seam allowances of the front panel, but be careful not to snip off any of the stitches. And turn it right side out. You can use a needle to get the corners out neatly. At the top of the front panel, fold 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch from the edge towards the wrong side and do a zigzag stitch right next to the edge. Match up the bottom edges of the solid and lace panels if you haven't already and take your elastic. Place the elastic against the bottom edge on the wrong side. And do a zigzag stitch right along the edge of the elastic. Pull the elastic gently and align all the edges as you sew. Overlap the ends of the elastic about 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch and trim the elastic. Flip the bottom edge towards the wrong side so the elastic is now encased. Do another zigzag stitch right over the stitches and again pull gently as you go. Finally, take the long strip and fold it right sides together lengthwise. And do a narrow zigzag stitch with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance down to about half and turn it inside out. I'm using a small safety pin to do this. Attach the safety pin at the end and guide it through the tube. Place the safety pin at the end of the strip and thread it through the casing at the top of the front panel. And tie the ends into knots. And your halter top is complete. It's pretty, fitted, and comfy. Great for lessons or troop costuming, and it's fun to match it with your practice bottoms or hip scarf too.
And you can make these cute practice pants that I'm wearing in Sparkly Belly's All Access membership. If you want to make your own, check out the link in the description.
First, take 2 measurements on your body. Belt line, this is where the waistband of your pants would sit. Measure the circumference. And hip line, this is the largest part of your hips. Again, measure the circumference. Then take your fabric and check to see which direction it stretches. If your fabric is 4-way stretch, meaning it stretches in all 4 directions, that's great, but there should be a direction that's stretchier. Make a mental note of that. Next, fold the fabric in half right sides together and make sure the direction of stretch is perpendicular to the fold. And fold in half again and make sure it's nice and smooth. At the top of the fabric, draw a horizontal line. And from the fold, measure your belt line divided by 1.2 and by 4 plus 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch and mark it on the line. Back on the fold, measure 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch from the first line and draw another horizontal line. Measure the same distance as above and mark it on the line. Next, from this line, measure 10 centimeters or 4 inches and draw a horizontal line. Mark your hip measurement divided by 4 plus 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch and mark it on the line. From this line, measure 30 centimeters or 12 inches and mark the same measurement as above. Now connect all the marks on the lines and smooth out this top area so there's no sharp corner. Cut along the outline and you have 2 identical panels. From the leftover fabric, cut 2 long strips that are 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches wide and about 1 meter or 39 inches long. And that's it. Let's start sewing. Take each of your skirt panels and fold 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch from the bottom edge towards the wrong side. Do a zigzag stitch to keep the folds in place. Then place the panels right sides together. Do a narrow zigzag stitch with a 2 centimeter or 3/4 of an inch seam allowance along side seams. Then at each seam, fold the seam allowance flat like this and do a narrow zigzag stitch right next to the raw edges. This creates channels for the ties. Next, take your long strips and fold each one in half right sides together. And do a narrow zigzag stitch with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance down to about half and turn each one right side out. I'm using a small safety pin here to do this. Simply attach the safety pin to one end and guide it through the tube. Place the safety pin at the end of the tie and from the bottom end at the side seam, thread it through one of the channels and take it through the other channel. And tie the ends into knots. Repeat on the other side and even out the ties. And the ruched skirt is ready. You can just finish up the top edge and wear it as is, but here I'm going to attach the skirt to my pants. So remove the waistband of your pants, or if you're making a pair from scratch, don't attach the waistband. On your skirt at the top edge, find the center points in the front and back. Mark them with pins. And place it inside the pants so the right side of the skirt is facing the wrong side of the pants. Match up the center front and back and side seams and the rest. And do a regular zigzag stitch with a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all around the waistband area. If the length of the layers don't match exactly, gently pull the layers as you sew to align the edges. Bring the skirt out, scrunch the sides, and your pants with built-in skirt are complete. I love this ruched skirt and the ties are so cute. And it's really liberating when I don't have to worry about my skirt shifting or falling as I move around. Now I have a great pair of pants for dance lessons, yoga, or festivals. To make this drape armband, you need fabrics for drapes. I'm adding 2 layers of different sizes for this armband. The large one is 12 inches by 18 inches and the small one is 8 inches by 12 inches. First, wrap elastic around your upper arm and make it snug and tight. Give it extra 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters and cut. Then take your stretch fabric and cut it into the length of elastic plus 3/4 of an inch by the width of elastic times 2 plus 3/4 of an inch and place it right side down. Fold 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter from the bottom edge towards the wrong side and place the corner of your drape panels like this. About 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters of the corner should be on the fabric. Both of these layers I use for the drape don't fray, so I left the edges unfinished. If your fabric frays, finish the edges before you attach it to the armband. Then fold 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter from the top edge and bring that fold down to meet the bottom fold. Match up the folds and do a narrow zigzag stitch with the 1/8 of an inch or 2 millimeter seam allowance. Next, insert the elastic through the tube with the safety pin and pull the ends of the elastic out and overlap them by 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters and sew them together. I just use a simple zigzag stitch to make a box like this. Smooth out the fabric so that the elastic is hidden and the ends of the tube are on the opposite side of the drapes, and overlap the ends. Fold the end that is on top so it looks nice and clean. Do a straight stitch to secure the fabric in place and decorate it as you like. Now here's a tip for making armbands. Sometimes armbands fall off your arms easily. If that's the case, add a piece of thinner elastic that's tighter than the armband. Attach it to the inside of the armband at 4 points. This will help hold up the armband, and because you add the elastic on the inside, your arm will appear smooth, not squished. Now have fun dancing with the drape armband. Play around with the drapes too, because you can just use one layer or, like I did, use multiple to match your costume. You can shape the fabrics differently, like circular, triangle, or a square, and create different expressions.
By the way, this amazing hourglass dress is one of my favorites and is also available in Sparkly Belly's All Access membership, along with over 30 other designs. Learn more at the description below.
First, to make sure your finished hip scarf fits you well, take these 2 measurements. Belt line. This is where you want the waistband of the hip scarf to sit. Measure the circumference. And hip line. This is the fullest part of your hips. Measure the circumference. For this project, I decided to skip pattern making and draw directly onto my fabric. But if you're unsure, make a pattern first following the instructions, then cut your fabric. First, fold your fabric right sides together in half. Make sure the direction of stretch is perpendicular to the fold. And fold it again. I fold it like this to cut the front and back panels in one go, but if your fabric doesn't fold like this neatly, simply cut one panel at a time. On the side with 2 folded layers, pick a point at the top and from there, measure a quarter of your belt line measurement minus 3 centimeters or 1¼ inches. Make a mark there. Back to the point on the fold, measure down 5 centimeters or 2 inches and measure the same length again from this point. Back on the fold, measure down 7½ centimeters or 3 inches from the last point and measure a quarter of your hip line measurement minus 1 centimeter. Back on the fold, measure down 20 centimeters or 8 inches from the last point and measure a quarter of your hip measurement minus 1 centimeter again. Connect all these points and smooth out the hip area. And cut along the lines except for the bottom line. Now pin or clip the top 2 layers together along the side seam. And repeat for the bottom 2 layers. Then open up the layers carefully and straighten the fabric. On one side, extend the side seam line by 35 centimeters. If you want a longer hip scarf, you can extend this further. Now connect the ends of the side seams with a nice curved line like this. Start out straight for the first couple of centimeters, then draw a very gentle S-curve and a straight line again towards the other side. And cut along the lines. From the leftover fabric, cut a long strip like this that's 4 centimeters or 1½ inches wide and about 1 meter long. Let's start assembling the hip scarf. First, for each of the panels, fold 2½ centimeters or 1 inch from the top edge and do a zigzag stitch. And for the bottom edge, fold 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch from the edge and do a zigzag stitch. Do this for both panels and press the seams flat at a low heat setting. Next, place the panels right sides together and align the side edges. At the shoulder edge, do a straight stitch with a 2 centimeter or 3/4 of an inch seam allowance. Stretch gently as you sew. At the longer side, do a zigzag stitch with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And press the seam open at the shorter edge. On the wrong side of the shorter edge, sew down the seam allowance about 2 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Use a straight stitch and again, stretch gently as you sew. This makes channels for the drawstring. Now take the long strip and fold it right sides together lengthwise and do a narrow zigzag stitch with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance down to about half and turn it inside out. I'm using a small safety pin to do this. Attach it at the end and guide it through the tube. Fold in the ends towards the wrong side and do a straight stitch and you have a nice matching strap. Turn the hip scarf right side out and take the safety pin again and attach it to the end of the strap. And guide it through one of the channels from the bottom of the hip scarf. Then take it through the other channel from the top. And tie a little knot at each end of the strap so it won't slip out easily. This drawstring allows you to gather this side of the hip scarf and create the ruching. And your ruched hip scarf is complete! It's stretchy, comfy, and pretty, and the extra length and the ruching design make it fun to wear. Use fabric with great prints or textures like lace and make your very own ruched hip scarf to show off at your next lesson. So I have this sleeve pattern that I made in my Mirage body stocking course. If you have a fitted sleeve pattern, fold it at the elbow and wrist and you can use it as your pattern. If you're starting from scratch, here are the measurements. Basically, the left side is a straight line and the top line is half the circumference of your elbow times 0.95. The bottom line is half the circumference of your wrist times 0.95. And the distance between these lines is your elbow to wrist measurement. Power mesh stretches in all directions, but often there's a direction that it stretches the most. Fold your power mesh in half right sides together and make sure the stretchier direction is perpendicular to the fold. Place the pattern on top with the straight edge against the fold. Cut according to the pattern while adding a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And repeat it to make another one. Keep each panel folded in half right sides together and do a zigzag stitch or use a serger along the long edge with the 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. For the top and bottom edges, I decided to leave them unfinished. This way, the edges won't be as visible and will melt into your skin when you wear them. But if you want to finish the edges, you can fold the edges towards the wrong side and do a zigzag stitch to keep the folds in place. And the gauntlets are finished! Now it's time to decorate. Cut out a piece of cardboard that's as wide as half your elbow measurement. Cut the corners round so it's easier to insert it. Insert it inside your gauntlet so it's stretched. By decorating with a piece of cardboard inside, you can make sure your gauntlet remains stretchy after you add lace and rhinestones. For one side, I placed my lace applique and whip stitch around the outline by hand. Then glued on rhinestones to match the dress. For the other side, I used this rhinestone stencil from Crystal Queen. It just makes it so easy to create a consistent, beautiful design. And the nude gauntlets are complete! They're super easy projects and fun to decorate. And I love how these gauntlets glam up the entire outfit without adding any weight.
And this beautiful dress is also, you guessed it, available in Sparkly Belly's All Access membership. If you want to make your own, have a look at the link in the description.
First, measure your belt line. This is where you want the waistband of your overskirt to sit. Take your pattern paper and cut it into a rectangle that's 32.5 centimeters or 13 inches tall and as wide as your fabric width. Fold it in half, make a crease, and open it up. Now do a quick calculation. Take your belt line measurement and divide it by 4 and subtract 5 centimeters or 2 inches. Measure this number from the fold along the top edge and make a mark. Do this on both sides of the fold line. From the marks, draw vertical lines. On one of the lines, measure 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch from the top edge and make a mark. On the other line, measure 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch from the top edge again and make a mark. And from there, measure 20 centimeters or 8 inches and make a mark. From this 20 centimeter mark, draw a horizontal line to the edge of the paper. Now connect the end of this line to the 2.5 centimeter mark on the vertical line. And connect the other end of the line to the bottom of the other vertical line. And connect this corner of the paper and the 2.5 centimeter mark on this vertical line. Now around these two areas, smooth out the lines with nice curves. And cut out the pattern. Alright, the rest is easy. So take your stretch lace and first check the direction of stretch. If it stretches from the selvage edge to the selvage edge, you can use the whole width of the fabric. My fabric stretched this way, so I cut the fabric into a 70 centimeter by 120 centimeter rectangle. And the pattern I made earlier was based on this 120 centimeter width. Fold your fabric right sides together and place your pattern on top like this so the fabric stretches along the waistband of the overskirt. Cut according to the pattern and you have 2 panels. So let's sew your lace overskirt. First, take each panel and fold 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch from the top edge towards the wrong side. And do a zigzag stitch along the edge of the fabric. Also, if you want to finish the raw edges, do so at this point. You have many options for this. You can fold the edge towards the wrong side and do a zigzag stitch, or you can sew on trimming along the edges. Or you can use a serger, or leave the edges unfinished since the fabric doesn't fray. It's up to you. Then place the panels right sides together and do a narrow zigzag stitch about 2.5 centimeters down from the top edge. Turn it inside out and you have a pretty lace overskirt. It's a really easy project and it's actually a modified version of my 10-minute overskirt. If you want to try an overskirt that's even easier than this one, have a look at that. You'll find the link in the description. Yes, you can make a brand new belly dance bra with scrap fabric too. Now I have a video where I explain how to make a belly dance bra step by step, so have a look at that. You'll find the link in the description.
So try these easy projects and transform your stretch scraps to beautiful pieces that you'll actually wear and love. If you like this video, you might also enjoy my 3 stretch fabric sewing tricks, which will help you sew these stretch items more smoothly and easily. Thanks for watching and keep sparkling!